Welcome back, folks, to my WrestleRant video series where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch in the WWE Network. Today I'll be talking about the 2011 installment of Survivor Series. Personally, my favorite Survivor Series as a fan, in addition to the 02 installment that I reviewed here on the channel. Cheap plug, make sure to check it out. But also a brief reminder, if you want to check out my in-the-moment reviews of Survivor Series 2011 and 2012, the next Survivor Series I'm going to be reviewing here on the channel. You can check it out here on the channel. I reviewed it here in an earlier edition of WrestleRant, right after it happened, Survivor Series 2011, and I believe 2012 too. You're going to have to go back a ways to 2-3 years ago if you really want to check them out. But these next two reviews, all these years later, kind of provide a fresh look on things, a fresh set of eyes on the pay-per-views that were 2011 and 2012 installments of Survivor Series, two of my personal favorites. More so the 2011 one, but I also enjoyed the 2012 one as well. So let's get right down to it. Kicking off the 2011 installment of Survivor Series was for the United States Championship, Dolph Ziggler versus John Morrison. Now, this was around the time that the Rider Revolution was at an all-time high, and if you go back and watch this match on the WWE Network, it was definitely evident during this contest when the entire crowd in MSG that night was chanting for Zack Ryder the entire time, booing Dolph Ziggler, booing John Morrison. It was awesome. And it was obviously evident that Zack Ryder should have gotten his United States Championship matchup on this show. And I'm not complaining because it made for an amazing moment at TLC, the same night that Daniel Bryan won his championship and at TLC the following month in December. So I'm not complaining. It still made for an amazing moment. But nevertheless, so I think it should have, a case can be made that it could have happened on this show, considering the fact that Madison Square Garden, New York was the backyard of Zack Ryder, who grew up in Long Island, New York. So it's not really surprising that they were very, very happy to see Zack Ryder, or really wanted to see Zack Ryder. But you remember, it was only a couple weeks prior to this that Ryder defeated Dolph Ziggler on the Halloween episode of Raw, if I remember correctly, in a non-title contest. And John Morrison beat Dolph Ziggler, I think, either the following week or the following week after that, in a non-title contest, earning his shot on the show. Logically, it should have been a triple threat match for the title instead of a one-on-one between Morrison and Ziggler. And Ryder, I believe, had a petition going around to earn a United States Championship matchup, which was mentioned during the course of this contest. But taking that all away for a second, Morrison and Ziggler have always worked well together. I thought this was a very enjoyable contest for the United States Championship, even if the crowd wasn't all that into it because they really wanted to see Zack Ryder. But great match, though. Dolph Ziggler goes over clean, still your United States Champion. Takes the mic afterwards, is proclaiming how great he really is and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, this would also be the final night that Dolph Ziggler would use I Am Perfection by Downstate as his entrance theme, as it was the following night on Raw that he debuted Here to Show the World by Downstate, and he's been using that ever since. So it's crazy to think it's been 3 years that he's been using that as his theme. But even still, though, Dolph Ziggler cuts a promo. Music starts after he's done talking something, and fuck, they're not going to do anything with Zack Ryder. They're not going to do the U.S. title with him and Ziggler right now. But Zack Ryder music's hit to a huge pop. He comes out to the ring. He takes it. Dolph Ziggler hits the Rough Rider. Does a woo 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 with the crowd. They go insane for it. They're so behind it. Zack Ryder celebrates with the crowd to end this segment. So I thought it was an amazing way to kick off the show. Even though it would have been better with Zack Ryder winning the U.S. Championship on the show, it was still great to see him nonetheless. It could have been worse. I mean, they could have not showed him at all and not given the fans what they wanted to see. But it was still cool to see Zack Ryder here in the opening segment, nevertheless. And this was one of John Morrison's final matches in WWE. Some people believed that they could do the switcheroo with the U.S. Championship at the last minute with Morrison turning heel. I know John and I, when we were watching the show, at JohnKnapp17 on Twitter, follow him now, cheap plug. I know when we were texting during this event, we had some suspicion that John Morrison was going to go over, if only because we thought of the possibility that he could be leaving. They wanted to swerve us. But he did not win here. He would end up leaving about a week and a half later, I think it was, maybe 8 days later on Raw. He lost that Falls Count Anywhere match to The Miz on Monday Night Raw. Still, though, very good match to kick off the show, and a great moment with Zack Ryder celebrating with his MSG home turf crowd in New York. So up next, we had the Divas Championship on the line in a lumberjill match between the current reigning champion Beth Phoenix and Eve Torres, in a rematch from the Vengeance pay-per-view 1 month prior. Now, the Divas division at this point in time, it wasn't terrible, but there was really nothing to care about whatsoever. I was happy that Beth Phoenix was champion, but there was just no real story going on in the division. The last real story we had was the ongoing chase between Beth Phoenix and Kelly. They botched that feud, and they finally gave the title to Beth Phoenix later than a lot of people would have liked, but it was still nice nevertheless. And they had a very good match on this show. I thought this matchup between Phoenix and Beth, between Phoenix and Torres was better than the match at Vengeance. The Lumberjill stipulation really did nothing to add to this matchup whatsoever. I think the Lumberjills threw either Beth, I think it was Beth, back into the ring earlier on in the contest. But aside from that, they really played no part in this contest whatsoever, which is probably for the better because these Lumberjill matches are always terrible. Go back and watch my Night of Champions 2010 review, cheap plug, for my thoughts on the Lumberjill match on that show. But remember, on that show, we had these useless diva brawls with Rosa Mendez punching literally nobody, and it was hysterical. It was hysterically bad, and I'm glad we didn't get that on this show. So less is more. But for a 5-minute match, for the 4.5-minute match that it was, I really enjoyed it. It was one of the better matches of 2011, and it was only memorable for the finish, if only, with the Glam Slam off the top rope, and I thought was an amazing spectacle, an amazing sight, a very impressive maneuver from Beth Phoenix, the Glamazon. So a great way to close off an otherwise forgettable, if albeit a solid matchup from Beth Phoenix and Eve Torres. So still your Divas champion, the Glamazon Beth Phoenix. Up next, we had the traditional 5-on-5 elimination tag team matchup, pitting Team Orton. We had Randy Orton, Sheamus, Mason Ryan, Kofi Kingston, and Sin Cara against Team Wade Barrett, Cody Rhodes, Jack Swagger, Hunico, and Dolph Ziggler, who was filling in for an injured Christian at the time. And maybe I misheard it. I know I was the only one tweeting about it at the time. I mean, there was not many people on Twitter in late 2011, but even still, I thought Christian, who was originally supposed to be on the team, not the team captain, but I think he was supposed to be on the team, I thought he was supposed to be at ringside for this contest, and he wasn't, so that kind of confused me a little bit. But regardless, so I thought this was a really good matchup. Early on, there was really nothing special about it. Mason Ryan was kind of being pushed to the moon at the time, and he was kind of eliminated really randomly. I mean, like Ryback this year, in this year's Survivor Series elimination match, they spent all this time building around him. And granted, Mason Ryan wasn't main eventing Raw and SmackDown at the time, but they were kind of pushing him aggressively. And after this, after he was cleanly eliminated by Cody Rhodes, he was never really on TV ever again before being released earlier this year. So hopefully the same doesn't happen to Ryback. But this would also be the match that Sin Cara would get injured in. He and Kofi Kingston would do a top rope tope or whatever it was through the middle ropes, or not top rope, whatever. They would go through the middle ropes. Sin Cara would obviously botch that, as he was known to do, and he hurt his ankle. I think he shattered it or something like that. Would not be able to continue the rest of the contest, and he'd be out of action for the next 6 months or something like that. So any possibility of Rey Mysterio versus Sin Cara happening at that year's WrestleMania was completely thrown out of the window in that moment. But that got rid of Sin Cara. Mason Ryan's gone. Cody Rhodes on the show would also debut knee pads, because for the 4 freaking years that he was in WWE, he never wore knee pads, and that really annoyed a lot of people, myself included. So that was a pretty historic moment, to say the least. But Cody Rhodes and Wade Barrett would emerge victorious as the sole survivors. I was very afraid that they would put Orton and Sheamus over strong, and thankfully that was not the case. Sheamus would get eliminated via disqualification, so it came down to Orton, Barrett, Rhodes, and Swagger got eliminated, and then Hunico got eliminated via an RKO off the top rope, and a pretty sweet visual. So Cody Rhodes and Barrett got put over strong here, and being the sole survivors and pinning Randy Orton, one of the biggest stars in Survivor Series history, in my opinion. So it was very cool to see them go over strong, even if it wouldn't do much for them. I mean, Wade Barrett would get injured a short time later. Cody Rhodes, who was Intercontinental Champion at the time, I thought would have a pretty good reign as Intercontinental Champion, but going into 2012, they never really did much with them, which I thought was a shame. But regardless, though, it was great to see them emerge victorious as the sole survivors in this contest. Up next, the World Heavyweight Championship. Mark Henry defending the world title against Big Show, kind of reigniting of the rivalry between the two from earlier on in the year after Mark Henry put Big Show on the shelf at Money in the Bank. Their match at Vengeance I thought was okay. This was definitely an improvement over that. Not by much. Pretty slow, pretty plodding. I mean, everything that you would expect from a match involving Big Show and Mark Henry. That's why I was so hesitant to see the feud reignite this past year. I mean, only a couple of weeks ago did these two become enemies, and I'm thankfully that's not the case anymore, because Big Show has since gone heel, so it's not a possibility that they continue that feud. Thank the Lord. But even still, though, I thought this was a decent match. Like I said before, it was better than their Vengeance match, better than their TLC match. So of the 3 pay-per-view matches they had that year, or 4 if you include the Money in the Bank one, I thought this was the best one. Memorable, if only for the high top rope flying elbow from Big Show, which is an extremely impressive maneuver, and the MSG crowd definitely let him know that. They went crazy for that, chanting Randy Savage afterwards. So that was a pretty cool moment. Mark Henry, in a weak finish, would get himself disqualified after a low-blowing Big Show, but Big Show would get his vengeance afterwards by attacking Mark Henry with a steel chair. Kind of reminiscent. And we would see the same thing about a year later with Sheamus and Big Show, ironically enough. So, I'll talk about that more in my Survivor Series 2012 review, but the finish was pretty weak. But my main concern was Mark Henry leaving the show as World Heavyweight Champion, and thankfully that was the case. Because remember, it was Survivor Series in both 99 and 2002 that Big Show would leave as the WWE Champion on both shows. So thankfully that was not the case here. And pretty good match by Mark Henry and Big Show standards. On the whole, it was pretty forgettable, but it was memorable. Just definitely go back and check out that the top rope flying elbow from Big Show. I thought that was spectacular. But kept the title on Mark Henry, so that's really all that I really cared about. Up next for the WWE Championship, Alberto Del Rio defending the WWE title against CM Punk, familiar foes. I really liked the pre-match promo and that it really put emphasis on the feud between CM Punk and Del Rio. It kind of took John Cena out of the equation, and when Punk and Del Rio would feud, they would take Punk out of the equation, and when these two would feud, they would completely forget about John Cena. It was a three-way feud for the latter half of 2012. It was all about Cena, Punk, and Del Rio in the WWE title picture for the latter half of that year, putting on great matches in every pay-per-view, in my opinion anyway. And I thought this was an equally entertaining matchup. Punk and Del Rio have always had great chemistry. This was no different, having an extremely entertaining contest here for nearly 17 minutes. A lot of reversals, a lot of near falls. The crowd is very much into CM Punk, 100%. He was so freaking over here. And in the end, he would force Del Rio to tap out to the Anaconda Vice, winning back the WWE title. Now, going into the show, I thought CM Punk would lose here via interference or via dirty tactics from Del Rio, whatever, in order to suspend the moment of CM Punk winning that title until TLC. We all knew he was going to win back the title at some point because they were going to be in Chicago in late 2012. I think it was the final week or so of 2011. So it was kind of a foregone conclusion that CM Punk was going to end the year as WWE Champion. It was just kind of a mystery at what event he would win back that title. And he would win back that championship on this show, and I thought was a great moment, easily one of the top moments of CM Punk's career. And I know the moment at Money in the Bank and what was my favorite match of all time, my favorite pay-per-view of all time, Money in the Bank 2011 in Chicago, that was an amazing moment, but I put the two in two different categories, because historically that was also a huge moment. So was this, because this would kick off his 434-day reign as WWE Champion, the longest championship reign of any championship in the WWE since Hulk Hogan in the 80s. So that was extremely impressive. It was extremely historic for that reason alone. But just you can just sense the happiness CM Punk is feeling once he captures that championship on the show. And the fact that it came in MSG of all places too. An extremely historic arena to say the least. And CM Punk very much knows that. And he made mention of that the next night in his promo on Raw. And that there was no better place aside from his hometown in Chicago to win that WWE Championship. So he picked two very good places to win his only two WWE Championships in WWE, in Chicago in his hometown, as well as MSG on this show. And on a historic show such as Survivor Series, one of the big four pay-per-views. So that was pretty cool. So it made for a great moment, him celebrating the crowd, an image I'll never forget, and that made for a very happy CM Punk celebrating with the WWE Universe. So great moment there where they would continue the feud between Del Rio and CM Punk. And I wasn't mad that Punk won the title so early, as a month early. It didn't really matter to me because Del Rio was a weak champion anyway. But made for a great moment with CM Punk celebrating with the crowd, like I said before, and it would kick off his historic reign as WWE Champion for the next year and a half. So up next, we've got the main event, John Cena and The Rock versus Awesome Truth. At the time, one of the most anticipated matches of 2011, if only because a lot of people thought that The Rock could turn on John Cena. Maybe it was just me, but I thought John Cena could turn on The Rock. But I forgot to mention this before, but earlier on in the evening, we had a promo from The Rock himself. And just so electrifying. There's no one else like The Rock on the mic, in that he can just capture a crowd's attention and enthusiasm in just one promo, much less one line. But the promo that he cut earlier on in the night about John Cena and Awesome Truth and his history in MSG and Survivor Series, the very same event, the very same arena he made his debut in 15 years prior. So that made for an amazing moment. I'm very glad they were able to mention that and sneak in and acknowledge the fact that Rock has history at this event, much less that arena as well. So probably wasn't planned that way, but it was really cool they were able to get Rock to wrestle on this show. At the time, I would have rather waited until WrestleMania to have his first match with John Cena, but it was kind of a two-out match. It wasn't it wasn't one-on-one. It was in the same event, same arena where he made his debut exactly 15 years prior. So I thought that was pretty cool. But The match itself was pretty entertaining. It was pretty solid for the most part. Nothing too special, but to see Rock back in the ring for the first time in over 7.5 years, I thought was pretty spectacular. But that was pretty cool. Awesome Truth held their own. I mean, they were made out to look like a bunch of jabronis, no pun intended. But in the weeks leading up to the show, the biggest problem with the build to this bout was that John Cena, even before The Rock showed up, could handle Awesome Truth all on his own. So there was really no point in bringing in The Rock. He said, I need a tag team partner for Survivor Series. Why? He dominated Awesome Truth on his own, so I really saw no reason for them to bring The Rock, unless they were going to do a heel turn or something, and then that never really came up to fruition. But after the matchup, though, after The Rock pinned The Miz with a people's elbow to pick up the victory for his team, John Cena and The Rock, in their post-match segment where their face-off was dragged out a little too long. I mean, I really enjoyed the Rock bottom with Rock getting the upper hand over John Cena. I thought that was really cool. But for that reason alone, unless they're going to do a heel turn or something like that, it dragged on a little too long for my taste. Not too long, but I mean, it could have been cut short by maybe a minute or so. But to see Rock end the show victorious, not only that, but laying out John Cena with the Rock bottom, I thought was pretty cool. Maybe it was just me, but it was also on this show that I pretty much just lost hope of a John Cena heel turn ever happening. Because if there was ever one moment for it to happen, it would have been on this show. Because I don't know about anyone else, because around this point in time, I thought that we were going to get an NWO stable in WWE featuring The Miz, R-Truth, John Laurinaitis at the helm of it, and Kevin Nash, of course, seeds of the original NWO. But they were doing that whole storyline that really led nowhere. Awesome Truth would break up the next night. Kevin Nash would come back a month later, lose to Triple H, and never be seen again, aside from the Royal Rumble this past year. And John Laurinaitis would be John Laurinaitis for the next 6 months, 7 months as the Raw General Manager. So that was pretty disappointing. But after this point, despite it, whether it be the Rise Above Hate storyline in early 2012, his feud with The Rock in early 2013, his what else happened this year? The feud with Brock Lesnar, all this other stuff, the Team Cena thing. I've never really truly given in to a John Cena heel turn. I lost all hope on this show. I think if there was any one particular moment that turned John Cena heel, it would have been on this show. From a business standpoint, it probably wouldn't have even made sense because they needed a babyface versus babyface in their first match at WrestleMania. So there was that. I mean, I was a little bit disappointed by the fact John Cena didn't turn heel, though. But that aside, I thought it was a pretty entertaining main event and a very entertaining show on the whole, a very strong show. So absolutely, I would suggest that you go out of your way to watch this show. I really enjoyed watching it back. I usually watch it. I didn't watch it in 2012, but I did watch it last year before Survivor Series to get hyped for that event, and I did watch it again this year before Survivor Series. I think I watched it on its 3-year anniversary. I also watched it with John for a brief portion of, I think the first portion of the show I watched with John. The same guy that I was talking to via text during the show, so he really enjoyed watching it back as well. But like I said before, go back and watch this on the WWE Network. If you're going to watch one match, I mean, it was really cool to see The Rock back in action in the main event, but I think CM Punk versus Del Rio was the match of the night in my opinion, and like I said before, for historical reasons alone, it would kick off his 434-day reign as WWE Champion, so definitely go back and check that out. Skip Big Show and Mark Henry, the Survivor Series tag team match, that was pretty entertaining. Divas match was good, and the opener was very good too. And the appearance of Zack Ryder was also very enjoyable. So 2 thumbs up for Survivor Series 2011. I'll be talking about the 2012 installment in my next video tomorrow to wrap up my Survivor Series review here on WrestleRant before we move into the month of December. And I'll talk about what events I'll be reviewing in the month of December and my final review of WrestleRant for the month of November. So with that being said, folks, make sure to check me out on Facebook at Graham G.S. Matthews, on Twitter at WrestleRant. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch you guys soon.